Okay, good morning, everybody. Steve Sabadeski, publisher of BayouBuzz.com, and today we have, I think, a really interesting Hangout, Google Hangout, with Lawrence Shahardy and Jim Brown. Uh, Good morning, guys. How are you doing?
Doing
Glad to be
great,
here,
thank you.
Steve.
Fine, fine. Now, first, we're going to talk about the Louisiana legislative session, and let me throw the first question out to Jim with some background information, and that is that, Jim, as a former Secretary of State, Insurance Commissioner, and Louisiana State Senator, as well as a columnist, let me ask you, what the heck is going on right now from your perspective, in terms of Louisiana legislature, and particularly in relationship to a poll that just came out from Bernie Pincinat? Just if you could just give us your overall take.
Well, the legislature itself, these fellows are they're in the quicksand. They're trying to pull themselves out, particularly those who have to run for re-election, because there is just no satisfactory way out, quite frankly, Steve. You can't find $1,200,000,000 in the budget without doing some massive cuts to special interests. Let me make that clear. Lawrence Shahardy, you and I could sit down and find those cuts, but there is so many vested interests that have their little niche built in, the various tax subsidies, and every lobbying group is coming in unbelievably and telling these legislators, now look, we're all for you for re-election, but you got to protect our subsidies. So out of all of that, there's hopes that by some nick or crook that they can get through this particular session. And what it means is that the new governor and new legislature are going to have an unbelievable mess on their hands. The new governor is going to have to call a special session very early. It's going to be just chaos. And particularly with no leadership on Jindal's part, you see, this could have been staged. This is no surprise. It's not like this is a secret. This has been going on for years. Let me tell you one of the most appalling things now. Do you know what's for sale? The state capitol, which is the prettiest state capitol in America. I visited most of them, quite frankly. Two of the hallmark landmarks right around it is the old insurance building that I operated in. It's been leveled. It's a real nice lot directly adjacent to the Capitol that is critical for growth in the future. And also the visitor center right over by the Pentagon Apartments, a beautiful structure for welcoming visitors. They're both for sale. The public can buy them. They can put in some kind of a juke joint. They can put in a retail. They can do whatever. And that's for sale because the legislature, the next thing you know, they're going to sell the Capitol itself. Everything's for sale just to get me through the next election. And
well,
I think it's just appalling. I think it's the lowest ebb in the state's history I've ever seen in terms of irresponsibility in Baton Rouge.
Maybe they're going to sell the fourth floor. Lawrence Shahardy, now, in terms of your background, obviously, assessor for Jefferson Parish, am I correct, 35 years?
That's correct.
Okay, great. And fellow attorney, and Jim, you're an attorney also. And Lawrence, you heard Jim. He's saying that, with his experience and with your experience dealing with state government, local government, he's saying that they're trying to get through just to the next year. You read the poll, Bernie Pincinat. People want to raise revenues. They feel they don't want to, but they feel like they need to. Yet it looks like it's not going to. It may not happen over the next 6 months. If Bobby Jindal has his way, and that is that he's threatening to veto. So what's going on? What's your take?
Well, as Jim said, and I don't like to be repetitive, but it's a mess. This problem of spending and not being able to meet the state budget is something that's been going on for many years. This is not an overnight thing. This didn't just happen yesterday. So Baton Rouge, the governor of the legislature, has known this is going on and has been trying to deal with it for several years. The governor has pretty much given them an almost insurmountable task of trying to deal with the budget, trying not to do any more massive cuts, not going in and cutting higher education, for example, or hospitals any more than they've been cut already, and they've been cut pretty much to the bone already. It looks to me like the best we're going to see out of this legislative session is sort of a patchwork. In other words, they're going to try to come up with enough money in the short term to get the state past the next several months to elect a new governor and to have that governor come along and have a special session in which that governor and that new legislature is going to have to solve the problem or deal with the problem. It's a huge problem. This state is going to have to address, all of these concerns. It's one thing to attract business and industry by giving them tax breaks. It's another thing to attract them by giving away the revenues that you already have. And I think that's been a major part of the problem. But the bottom line is simply that with over $1 billion deficit that the state's dealing with, it is a huge problem. And it's not only business that is going to be facing some big tax increases, but I suspect before this is all over that individual taxpayers in Louisiana are going to be hit also. And not only in direct taxes, but also indirectly. For example, is the legislature going to go through and limit TOPS? Are they going to say that we're only going to fund a certain amount of money to those who qualify for TOPS, and that if the tuition is higher, that you're going to have to make up the difference? So the cost of living in Louisiana, the cost of going to school, just the overall cost by way of taxation is likely to go up. And I've said all along that with this governor's race coming, I'm hoping that the news media holds these candidates accountable by asking them directly, what are you going to do? Not platitudes of I'm going to have a commission come together and we're going to look at the problem, we're going to solve it, but specifically, what are you going to do? Everybody's looked at it. We need to know specifics.
Let me just throw some out to you. We heard that the last race, the U.S. Senate race, and we heard, candidates say, well, as the day one, we're going to repeal Obamacare. Well, we're still waiting, for a repealing of Obamacare. That's a lot of BS as far as I'm concerned. Telling us, well, I'm going to do this. Yeah, I'm in favor of something, but so what? I mean, I heard. Let me just finish by saying that a few weeks ago, I heard legislators say that, oh no, we're going to fund this thing for an entire year. You're not going to have a piecemeal funding. And now Tyler Bridges breaks a story in the Advocate that says that's exact. They're going to look at piecemeal funding till the end of the year, basically just what you're saying. And to me, that is a crock. Anyway, go ahead, guys.
Well, the other thing I want to throw in, Lawrence, and before you take off, not only are there a lot of taxes being raised to try to get through, but there's a serious legal issue as to how the taxes are raised are even legal to begin with. Lobby, Treasurer John Kennedy, who I have a lot of respect for, both are saying that it takes a 2/3 vote to raise some of this particular revenue, and a number of the taxes that were passed did not have a 2/3 vote. So we could see this whole thing immersed in litigation going on for months to come. So they may claim victory for 6 or 8 months, and then a judge may throw that victory out, and another special session is going to be necessary right in the middle of the election. So this thing is a real mess, and it still has life, and it's still got a long, long way to go.
Well, and just remember this, though: we're talking not about legislators, or at least I'm not talking in terms of just legislators or just a congressman. A congressman or a legislator can say, look, when I go, you elect me, you send me to Baton Rouge, you send me to Washington, this is what I'm going to do. We're talking about the governor, and the governor has tremendous power in this state, and a governor who chooses to lead can get a lot done. So we need to hold these candidates to what it is that they're proposing to do. We need to first find out what is it you want to do and how you want to do it, so that the people of the state, when they elect the next governor, they have a governor who's on record as to what he or she is going to in fact do, and that's all that I'm saying.
Sure. No, listen, I do understand, and when I said it's a bunch of crock, I wasn't referring to, what you were saying. I was just saying, what they're leaving us. I mean, right. they're abdicating, as far as I'm concerned, they're abdicating their responsibilities, by by only trying to do a piecemeal deal, in my opinion, because they're afraid of the governor. They're afraid of the governor's veto. And I understand what you're saying about two-thirds versus an illegal implications. But my God, you're going to have that same issue under a new governor. Okay, whether it's still going to, you're still going to need the two-thirds most likely just to play it safe. So, I mean, why in the world would these legislators give up their obligations they have right now, okay, to appease a governor who, quite frankly, doesn't care about Louisiana, only cares about himself? Why should we do that?
Well, I think it's a self-serving thing that legislators are in the Baton Rouge delegation, by and large, Republicans overwhelmingly voted for all these taxes, and most of them that did so, if you look at the vote, number one, are running for re-election, and that's a two-edged sword. But they're hoping to be such strong Republicans they won't have Republican opposition, and they'll appeal to Democratic or independent voters by saying, hey, I did try to solve the problem. Number two, there's tremendous pressure in this town from LSU. LSU is saying, give me, give me, give me. And I wrote a column, Steve, you recall a few weeks ago, saying LSU doesn't want to cut back or look at being more efficient. All they're saying, just don't question us, just give us money. Well, there's a huge a lobbying effort on the part of LSU from alumni and university galore on these legislators saying, you got to give us money. So I thought it was interesting. If you look at that vote, a number of Republicans that normally wouldn't be rushing out to vote for any taxes are doing so in the hopes that that's going to be a niche to let them get reelected. So you got all kinds of conflicts going on here. Jindal, I don't think they're genuflecting to Jindal. I think they feel like he's a gone pecan. But I think what they're doing is looking for self-survival, and in their minds, they feel like the taxes are necessary to survive because of all these huge interest groups in here today.
I mean, yeah, go on, Lawrence.
Okay, I would suspect that many of our legislators really are trying and really want to do the right thing. But the fact that you have a governor who is fairly detached from what is going on in Louisiana right now, although he still has the power of the veto pen. So you have to be aware of that. As a legislator, you have to be aware of that. And the possibility of legislators
Lawrence freezing up on us there, Steve?
I think so.
Why don't I just pick up while you're trying to get him back there? I think Lawrence, that veto pen, it leaves a lot of uncertainty.
Hold on.
Wait for the next.
Lawrence, we missed your entire response. Are you there? Why don't you do this? Why don't you hit? I don't know what happened, but if you're there, why don't you go ahead and hit F5, reboot your browser.
Who, me?
Yeah, because we lost all that.
Oh, it was brilliant.
I know.
It really was, but we didn't hear it.
Well, I tell you, so you're back. Let's give it another try. Go ahead. So your response was about the veto power. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, legislators are facing the veto threat of the governor. The governor himself is really detached. His focus is on national politics, running for president. So they understand that. And I do believe they want to try to do the right thing. But with the threat of a veto pen, it gets you down to a reality. And the reality is okay, what can we pass that, if worst case scenario, leads us to at least a short-term fix that regrettably the next governor and the next legislature will have to deal with. The threat of the veto is a reality, and you've got to live with that.
Well, yeah, I agree. I mean, I certainly understand what you're saying, but also what's a reality is the process of a veto override. Now that will I mean, you're talking about 2/3. Any type of real solid solution is going to take a 2/3 majority anyway. So, whether you do it now, you do it later. I mean, you're talking
Well,
about having to, having. Now, I understand you may have a governor in favor of the 2/3 versus against the 2/3, but I mean, it just seems to me that you're looking at 2/3 anyway. So get it done now.
well, remember what Jim said a few moments ago. Some of these taxes are being passed, or some of these bills are being passed without a 2/3 vote, and there is some question as to whether that's legal or not. So having a 2/3 vote to override the veto may not be there in all cases. But
Okay.
you know what? Despite all of this, here's the problem. Problem is that the governor and the legislature has gotten the state into this pickle barrel, and right now has no feasible way of getting us out of it, except possibly in a piecemeal fashion, and that is regrettable. The real regrettable part is we never should have gotten to this point. These problems should have been dealt with years ago. Selling state assets, using one-time money to balance the budget, that's all smoke and mirrors. That's what's been used. That's why the state's in the trouble that it's in today, because of poor fiscal planning and the poor day-to-day management of the state. And that's really what the message is.
So is there a chance that our good governor is going to go on the campaign trail and say, look, for 8 years we had a balanced budget without raising a single penny of tax?
Well, I monitor the local, rather the national press, just like you guys do, and Jindal's getting eaten alive. I mean, he's that record is starting to come back to haunt him. James Carville said it pretty good last week, and I think he says he's going to say it in his commencement address.
Right.
I believe is today or tomorrow, I think, at LSU, saying you can't hide from history, Governor, and history's not going to bode well for you. And the national press is picking up on that. I saw a national poll today with the 10 candidates listed, and Jindal was at 1%. Hey, can I make a projection right now? I make a projection to you right now. I don't think Bobby Jindal's going to run for governor. I think that it's looking so bad for him that he's going to find some graceful way out and try to tie in with a think tank and maybe be a Fox contributor if they'll do something like that. I don't think the guy's actually going to run because he's dug such a deep hole for himself. And what's happening here, it took a while, but the national press seems to be picking up on the fact that there's huge problems in Louisiana. I saw a story in the Washington Post where they quoted David Vitter, his senator, where they quoted Jay Darden, his Secretary of State, all Republicans, and Scott Angel that used to work for him, and they all nailed him. They all said, he just dropped the ball. So I think that the hole is getting deeper. I don't think Bobby Jindal is going to run for president. I think he's going to opt out and look for some graceful way to go away into the sunset.
Lawrence?
Well, what Jim is saying may actually end up being true. Maybe Governor Jindal will not. And the sad part is that for the past how many years he's been positioning himself to run for president, and allowed the state to basically decay under his watch. If he in fact doesn't run for president, I think the message being sent to the voters of this state is really bad. And I do believe the voters of the state you may see his poll numbers drop even more because people are going to feel like they've been led down a primrose path. The governor's running for president. Now he's not going to run. And the net result of all of this is the state of Louisiana is in the worst shape it's been in. And maybe it's history. Certainly not good. So I don't know. Bobby is a friend, was a friend, and I can still consider him to be a friend. But he has really dropped the ball. If you're going to serve as governor or you're going to serve as a justice of the peace, when you're elected to office, your number one job, no matter what else you may be interested in, your number one job is to do your job. And unfortunately, that has not happened in the past 7.5 years.
It's really, yeah, go on, Jim.
Mm-hmm. Lawrence, what would have happened if when you were assessor, that more than 50% of the time in your year you were out of the state or North Louisiana. Well, I'm looking at the governor's race, and which your dad, by the way, did and would have been a very viable candidate for governor. But he did his job, you know. If you look at these governors who are running, that's one of Chris Christie's problems right now. He started off really good out of New Jersey, and then he started. People started looking at his record. He's kind of plummeted down. Or the Scott Walkers and the Kasichs out of Ohio and some of these other governors are bragging, hey, look what we did in our state. So I think it was a terrible, stupid political decision to go off and run all over the country and give all these speeches and not tend to the business at home. But you couldn't have gotten away with that. I couldn't have gotten away with that in my public offices. I spent half the time outside of the office. It just doesn't wash. It doesn't pass the smell test. Now it's all coming home to roost. And I think, Steve, you summed it up very, very well. I think once, if he doesn't run, which I don't think he is, then people are going to say, my gosh, we weren't crazy about you spending all this time away. Now you change your mind, and look what we're facing. We're facing big tax increases. We're facing disruption. We're facing devastation to health care and to education. And what a huge mistake we made.
So, well, you know, if you're gonna want to move up, you want to be able to show a record. You want to be able to show that you've done a good job with where you're at. And you know, in Louisiana, you know, the Governor Jindal cannot do that. He has nothing to look at. He can distort the record, but the fact of life is that the state fiscally is in deep, deep trouble. And if you're going to run for president, you want to be able to say, look what we did back home. Look what I did in my state. I did all these great things, and now we were in the bottom 10 of all the bad categories. Now we're of those same categories. We're now in the top 10, and that's what I've done in my term as governor. And that's what I'm going to do for this country. I'm going to take that record and that experience and use it going forward. How is the governor going to say that? You know, there's nothing to point to.
Well, yeah, I mean, he'll say it. I mean, he'll say it. I mean, he has no problem saying it because, in my opinion, the people he's saying it to are not going to question him. I mean, that's. I mean, he has decided, hey, I don't need to talk to those people who are going to question me. I'm going to go to these duds who are just going to publish what I have to say without even you know, again, asking, oh, excuse me, Governor, but you know, the truth is this. You know, how do you respond to that? So let me just ask you this question, because we do have an election coming up for Louisiana governor and also for legislature across the board, and we're talking about the fact that Governor Jindal dropped the ball in terms of his being out of town and his being on the campaign trail and his you know, doing this and that. But wait a minute, what about the fact that maybe it's just his policies? It's the policies. I mean, if I'm the Democratic Party, and I think, Lawrence, you and I talked about this before on a recent hangout, if I'm a Democratic Party, I'm going to run against Jindal, but I'm going to run against his policies. And if I'm a Democrat running for a state government, I'm going to run against Jindal's policies. The policies, you know, you cannot, if you want to have the same government that you had the year before, you know, can you go and can you keep taxes low? I mean, how do you do it? That's the problem. You know, we're in this position right now because of the fact that in year one of Jindal's government, okay, he completely changed the policy of the state of Louisiana. And he was hoping to have income coming in, and it didn't come in. And as a result, we've had to use one-time money because we didn't have enough revenues coming in. So that's the bottom line as far as I'm concerned. You've got to change the policy. What Republican is going to do that?
Well, I would think.
Let's ask him.
And Yeah, in the debates, at least, I think none of the three major Republicans have said they won't take the Medicare, Medicaid funding procedure or Medicaid procedure, where there's some $18 billion available to Louisiana over the next 10 years. They're leaving that door open. They haven't said. I think Darden and Angel both said yes, and Vitter says probably yes. When you look at the tax breaks, they've all been very aggressive in terms of the giveaways. And gosh, Lord knows how much we've given away in this state. We've just given the Department of Economic Development a checkbook and said, go buy any business any way you can. And so I think there's been some rhetoric that is much more cautious in terms of Jindal's policies. Now, specifics, no, as Lawrence said, they haven't gotten specific at all. But at least the tone has been to take on the governor, to say we've been irresponsible. We may have to look at that. We either look at or take the Medicaid money. So there at least is a little bit more chatter. Now, I haven't gone back and checked. You may say, yeah, if you go back 8 years, Jindal said the same thing. But of course, and 8 years ago, we had $1 billion surplus when Kathleen Blanco, poor old Kathleen, everybody beat up on poor old Kathleen. She left the state with $1 billion in the bank. But whatever the rhetoric then was, at least, it's not hard right. No, 1,000 times no. Let's strictly talk about social issues. You don't see that coming across in the debate so far of the major candidates for governor.
Well, and I think that people aren't focused on the governor's race right now, or the legislature races right now. But I mean, for an example, David Vitter was against the stimulus, was against the bailout, didn't want to spend a penny of government money, and railed everybody who was willing to do that. So now what? He's running for governor, and he's saying, hey, what's wrong with the government? Well, what's wrong with government money? Let's take it. I mean, and that's hypocrisy, isn't it?
Well, he won't be the first hypocrite that end up in the government. Well, I guess on the other hand, maybe he's seen the light and seeing the. And now the question is, will he just look at you? Well, Earl Long said, what do I tell him, Governor? You promised them. I said, well, tell the bastards I lied. I don't know if he had brass, but at least Vitter is I think he realizes he's got a massive problem, and they all do, and as a consequence, he's just not trying to paint himself into a corner where he can't use these funds, and I hope he uses the funds. I think it's just been a disaster not to take the funds to begin with.
So. Would you agree that the Democrats then, as much as they're despised in Louisiana over the last 8 years because of the very reason, the economic policies, I should say for the most part, would you say that their argument, would seem to resonate more? Now, I know Bernie Pincinet's poll indicated that people are more inclined to vote for Republicans this election season than Democrats, but the arguments really haven't been out there yet. So I'm just raising the question as whether or not Democrats are going to make a comeback, because now even David Vitter is going to have to make a Democratic / base argument.
Well, again, look, the race has not really begun yet. And these polls, and I think Bernie's poll is right on target, at least as far as today's world is concerned. But we have to run the race, and so from the standpoint of a Democrat and the standpoint of John Bel Edwards running for governor as a Democrat, I agree. I think he's going to run against the policies that this state has been using for the past 7.5 years. I think he'll definitely run against that, and he'll attempt to wrap those policies around the other candidates. Now, the question is going to be
the Jindal-Vitter policies. Yeah, the Jindal-Vitter policies.
He's going to try to wrap them around the other Republicans, or the Republicans. And then the question is are the voters going to distinguish these candidates from Bobby Jindal? If they don't, then you're going to see those numbers change. John Bel Edwards is going to do much better than he's doing right now. But if they like the general conservative Republican policies, but believe that these candidates won't go down the exact same path, then it's really going to be a battle between 3 Republicans against 1 Democrat. And the likelihood is that, at least in today's world, the Republican candidate who makes the runoff with the Democrat is going to win. So
Jim,
we have to run the race. We have to run the race.
Jim, you agree?
I do, and I think that Lawrence is right on. The Louisiana has more interest and support of positions on social issues than virtually any other state in the country, on issues like gay marriage and abortion and so many of these social issues. That drives so much of the vote from Baton Rouge north, and so that puts that into the Republican camp. Even though you may be on food stamps, you may have an 8th grade education, and you're living up in up in my old district, up in Faraday or something like that. By and large, today you vote Republican. To some degree, there's racial tones to that decision. So that is a plus for the Republicans, because they get as Lawrence says, let's assume that whoever gets in, Vitter's leading right now in the runoff, if John Bell Edwards holds like he is, actually an articulate guy that could actually grow. But once he gets into that runoff, you get the knee-jerk Republicans who just whether it's racial, whatever the social issues, whatever it is, are going to pull that Republican lever. We saw that with Mary Landrieu. We've seen that in Bernie's poll. We've just seen it time after time, and I just don't think that's going to change.
Yeah, maybe it's too late for the Democratic Party to become more conservative. In terms of the issues, and I mean, a lot of people believe that the Democratic Party is run by a bunch of liberals, and it doesn't have the same type of conservative infrastructure that it had, say, 8 years ago, 10 years ago, and maybe that's part of what the problem is.
I think that the party needs to get over Barack Obama and get into a new phase, and get the focus of black-white to some degree behind us, quite frankly, and I think that will help. Number two, I think the party, Democratic Party, has been quite unsuccessful at raising any money. When Buddy Leach was the chairman, he could bankroll a good bit of the party effort. The retail politics of the party, I just don't see any effort taking on a grassroots level to try to organize and focus and recruit candidates and do the thing that a party growing is trying to do. So I think you just kind of suck it up. If I could give advice to the Democrats, just got to get to the next presidential election, get through this governor's race, and in a couple of years sit down and focus on rebuilding the party. I think it's pretty much a wasted effort for the next year or two.
Lawrence?
Yeah, I don't disagree with Jim. I think Louisiana's Democratic Party sees itself more as a national Democratic Party than a Louisiana Democratic Party. And as long as the party perceives itself in that role.
Looks like we're going to lose you again, Lawrence.
Right. Well, you can edit that. You can edit all that, can't you, Steve?
Oh yeah, sure, absolutely. Lawrence, you there?
I was going to cut in, continue, but let's just let you edit that out.
Yeah, I'm not sure. Lawrence, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so we lost you again. Yeah, you may want to check your internet connection.
Yeah, I mean, I'm connected, but apparently I'm getting a weak signal periodically.
Yeah. Okay, so anyway, why don't you pick up in terms of what you were saying about the Louisiana Party, Democratic Party, I'm sorry.
Well, the Louisiana Democratic Party, I believe, sees itself more as a national Democratic Party than a Louisiana Democratic Party. And as long as it continues to perceive itself that way, it's going to continue to have difficulty winning statewide races here in Louisiana.
Okay. Well, guys, we're going to have to wrap it up, but let me just throw this question out to you guys, and that is, given that we have less than a month left in the Louisiana legislative session, and given the fact there's already overtures that we talked about today, that we're going to have a short-term fix rather than actually having a balanced budget for the entire year. as we always do and have done since I think that I can remember. What would your feelings be about just a short-term fix?
I guess a short-term fix is better than no fix at all, but you just may have to do that because of the possibility of constitutional challenges to some of this funding. If that really gets serious, when you look at the vote, I followed the vote fairly closely. If you do that, then the governor's going to have to call another special session, probably in end of July or August, which these legislators running for re-election aren't going to be happy about, but to try to kind of, what they're doing is putting their fingers in the dike. The dike is growing, it's about to break, and they are putting their fingers in the dike, just praying, Lord, let me get through the coming months and get reelected, and then we'll start all over again. That, by the way, somebody said, well, why aren't they dealing with, maybe you said, Steve, aren't they dealing with now and not waiting until the new governor? Well, because, when the new governor comes in, if you're a legislator's got reelected, then you got 4 more years, you see. But they don't want to deal with these issues coming up with an election right around the corner. So I just don't know what, there's some pretty responsible folks down there that have been watching this thing for years and years and just shaking their head in frustrations. I just don't hear anybody talking about, well, here's the way the law works. And unless you want to do some real cutting in terms of the giveaways that we do massively, I just think we're going to be limping along.
Lawrence?
Well, as Jim said, a short-term fix is better than no fix at all. What I'm hopeful for is that the legislative leadership is able to put together this fix so that we can get through at least the first half of the state's fiscal year. And then the next governor and the new legislature are just going to have to bite the bullet and deal with it. And the taxpayers in this state, as well as business, are going to have to buckle their chin strap and hope for the best, because it is going to be a very, very rough ride if we don't find real fiscal solutions, real financial solutions to the state's budget. We're going to be in for a lot worse than what we've seen.
Well, I'm going to have the last say on this, and that is I believe that if that's what the state legislature decides to do, I have no reason to vote for the same legislators who vote for that. I mean, I don't want to hear what you're going to do. I want to know what you've done, and if you're going to kick the can way down the road again and tell me that you're going to be different under a new governor, who we don't even know who the governor is going to be. Look, do your work now. If you can't do this during the regular session, then call a special session. You can do it yourself. Call a special session and get it done under this governor, and override the governor if you need to do so. So I have no confidence at all in any legislator who's going to vote for that type of piecemeal policy. And one last thing that I might add, and that is that if the last 8 years has taught us anything at all, it is that legislators need to take away power from the governor. I don't care if it's Bobby Jindal, if it's David Vitter, if it's John Bell Edwards. They need to pony up, get up there, and say, look, we're not going to let you have the power of the chair anymore. I mean, you have the power of the governor, and you also want to control how we do things down here. This game is over, because this is how we're. That's why we're in this kind of situation that we're in now. We're giving the governor too much power, and so guys, unless you want to respond real quickly, we're out of here. But go ahead if you want to respond.
10 seconds, Steve. I got a flag I'm going to send you. I got one outside my house right now. I'm going to send you a flag. It's a big white flag with a finger pointing at you, and it says, "In the fall, fire them all. In the fall, fire them all." So I'll send you the flag.
Okay, we'll put that as the picture on this on this hangout. Lawrence.
Well, look, I'm not going to debate at all. You get elected to public office, you're supposed to do your job. And should the legislature be doing the fix now? Yeah, they should. That's just the reality. But the fact, sometimes you have to live with the facts of life. And it does not appear at this point that the facts of life will allow the legislature to do the fix. And so they're going to do the best they can. Is it right? No, they should do the fix. But sometimes you've got to live with reality in the world of politics.
Gotcha. Well, I'm sure we have a lot more of these discussions, and as the days and the weeks and the months as they come towards us, I'm sure we're going to have a lot more of these discussions as we go forward. I think what I'm trying to say. So, okay, guys, listen, thanks a lot, and I'm going to stop the broadcast. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.